This video is about the Dual, D-U-A-L, XHD6425 in-dash replacement car radio. This is an aftermarket radio. This radio became available about 2007. I purchased this one in 2011 secondhand on eBay. At the time they were retailing for about $130. I got this one for about half that much. I put it into the dash of my 2007 Subaru Outback. Now, back then, 20 years ago, all radios were the same size, which was nice. It made it very easy, very simple to get a replacement because all the radios were the same size. All you had to do was work on the wiring harness a little bit to get it to mate up. So, standard size radio. This radio has a remarkable number of features. There are a lot of good points, and there are a few bad points to this radio. Among the good points, this radio is an HD radio. HD stands for hybrid digital. HD radio is a trademark of a company called Ubiquiti. They created this technology. It enables them to layer a digital signal on top of an analog signal. So if you have a regular analog radio, you can still get it. You can still get the analog station, but using digital technology, they can embed 4 digital signals inside of the analog signal. So you can get as many as 4 additional stations. Now, the first station will always be the same as the analog, except it'll be digital, which means it'll be noiseless. The other 3 can be different soundtracks. This really is a very clever trick, and I don't understand why all radios don't have it. Just as an aside, the licensing for the HD is paid for by the broadcaster, not by the people who make the radios. So it doesn't add that much to the cost of the radio. So every radio really should have HD. Among the other good points, this radio has 18 FM presets and 12 AM presets. It plays both audio CDs and digital CDs. It can play digital CDs that have either MP3 files or WMA files. Now, if you take a regular CDR and you load it up completely with 800 megabytes, that's going to give you 12 hours of music. So you could just load one CD and it would take you for an entire long trip. In addition to reading MP3 CDs, you can also read USBs. This is the best part, I think. So I have a 2 gigabyte CD here, and it can read that. Now, 2 gigabytes, that's going to give you probably about 30 hours of music. And in addition to that, it can read directly off your Android smartphone. So I will remove the thumb drive. I'm going to go ahead and plug in this old Android smartphone. This is an old LG Android 2.2 level phone. Now you have to turn on USB storage. You do have to do a little work on the phone side. Okay, now it's connected and it's reading directly off the smartphone. Very versatile. Now, in addition to all those inputs, it also has an auxiliary input. So in case you have an external device that you want to plug into the radio, you can play it through the auxiliary port as well. Now I'm going to go move back to the CD player, playing our MP3 disc. It will pick up right where you left off. Now, once you start playing an MP3 file, the first thing it displays is the time that the disc, where you are in the file. We're 55 seconds, 56 seconds into the file. Seems like an odd choice for a default. Now it will read the ID tag of the MP3 file, and you can step through those fields by hitting the display key. Okay, it's the T1 file, and it's 9:47, so it's the time of day. Okay, first field is the track name. And it scrolls it from right to left. The second field is a directory. The third is the title of the song. And then the artist. And you can break up your digital disk or your thumb drive into directories, which makes it a lot easier to find things. And then the album. And then it displays the time again that the file has been playing. Now I'm going to switch over from CD to thumb drive, USB port. Now, in my particular radio, I'm having a little trouble with this control wheel, particularly this control right here, the step forward control. I'm not sure why it isn't functioning properly. It misfires. Now, this radio does come with a remote, and so I'm using the remote to step through the files. Now, I hit the forward, and you can step through the individual tracks. Now you can also step through the directories. These are the directory buttons, backwards and forwards. I'm going to go to the next directory, and it displays the 19th song was the start of the second directory. 22 is the start of the third directory. When you go to a different directory, it will start playing the first song in that directory. And it will play sequentially. Now, what you can do is you can get it to repeat a song. There is a repeat button. Or you can get it to play randomly. And there's a random button. It'll jump around randomly. It will also play the first few seconds of each track. It's called INT. I guess that means initial. A surprising number of features for such a reasonably priced radio that came out in 2007. And I've been very happy with it for the most part. Now, there are some negatives to it. For whatever reason, and I don't understand why, when you try to read the ID tags on the MP3 files on the thumb drive, this is what it just says no support. Now, if I take those very same files and I store them on a CDR, it will read them. But if they're on the thumb drive, they don't read them. I don't get that. I don't understand why that is. Artist, no support. Album, no album. A little frustrating. Now, the faceplate is detachable. Not that anybody would necessarily want to steal this thing, but now this radio has a lot of good features, all the stuff you want. It's HD. It reads thumb drives. It reads audio and digital CDs and CDRs, and it will even read smartphones, Android smartphones. Now, some of the downside. The display is an LED. This is probably the biggest downside for me. This is an LED display, which is great at nighttime. When it's dark out, you have no trouble seeing this at all. But in daylight, you cannot read this thing. On a bright sunny day, you can't read it at all. Just not bright enough at all. The radio that was in here before had an LCD display, which was backlit, and you had no trouble seeing it in the daylight or at night. This thing, you cannot read it in daylight. Another problem is the buttons are very small, and the writing is even smaller, and the controls are just not very intuitive. And I find myself frequently going back to the manual to figure out how to do things. Something as simple as changing the clock. I keep having to go back to the manual because I can never remember how to do it. One of my complaints about car radios is they're just so non-ergonomic. What I would love to have on one is a tuning knob, you know. Preset channels are great if you're going to stay in town, but when you're driving across country, and the stations all change, it would be nice to be able to sort of tune stations in and out. What this thing has is a scan button, which I really don't care for. In this case, when you're scanning for stations, it will only stop if the station is really strong. If there's only weak stations, it just keeps going. It won't stop. I'm going to go ahead and scan the entire dial. Now, there are quite a few stations around here, but unless they're really strong, it won't stop on them. It just keeps going. So if you're driving your car across country, you know, long distances, that's it. It stops on that one. That's the only one loud enough for this thing to pick it up. Now, when you're playing the radio, these buttons here, it's 3 buttons, and it clicks either. It's a click on either side, so it's a total of 6. That'll give you 6 presets. So this thing has this thing called bands. AM1, that'll give you 6. AM2, that'll give you another 6. FM1 will give you 6. FM2 and FM3 will give you another 6 each. So you have 18 preset FM and 12 preset AM. All in all, a pretty decent radio for the money. I would say overall, I would recommend it, particularly if you can get a used one at a good price. If you do most of your driving in bright daylight, I might consider a different radio than this one because, again, you just can't read the darn thing, and it's very inconvenient. If you're doing most of your driving at night, well, then it's probably okay. The manual for this radio is available online if you care to learn more about it. It's a good manual, very complete. And since it is a rather non-intuitive interface, in fact, I would say the manual would be really essential. Now, the radio does have Bluetooth capabilities. I believe an add-on is required. I do not have that add-on. I never tried it with Bluetooth, obviously. And with Bluetooth, you could, in theory, connect it to your telephone. So anything you didn't learn from this video, you can probably pick up from the manual.